Great, thank you.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Joe Marion here with Kelly Keogh from Greeneye Partners. We talked a lot in the last couple of days about change and about the way the industry is changing. What Kelly's company does is they focus on providing consulting services to companies that are ITADs, that companies that want to become ITADs. And so we call this session, getting and keeping that certification. It's important. In the future, if you want to do business with, the likes of Bank of America, they're going to say, are you a certified ITAD? If the answer is no, they're going to go on to the next guy. So if it's not today, it's not tomorrow. It's going to be very soon that you're going to want to be, engaging the services of somebody like Kelly at Greeneye. And Kelly, I'll turn it over to you with that.
Nice to meet you all. Thanks for your time this morning. I'm going to give a very high-level overview. And if you want any more information, I'm always available. You'll have my contact information just to talk, go over documents, talk about what the process looks like, a little bit more of a deep dive. Always open to sharing that with any of the members. And so we titled this Getting and Keeping That Certification. I can tell you that in the last 12 months, all of our new customers have been ITAD folks, which has been a change for us. We've always had some ITAD companies within our group of clients. However, this last year, for some reason, you all decided to come over this year. So there must be some driving factor. And we can talk a little bit about that moving on. So we're going to go over a little bit about the benefits of certification, a bit about the highlights of the industry's most popular certifications. The most important thing that everybody wants to know is how much it's going to cost and how long will it take. And then we're just going to share some simple resources for you if you want to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the different certifications. Just a little bit of information about me. I've been in the industry for a really long time, mostly in electronics recycling for the last 23 years. We're international, we're domestic. So we help people get certified all over the world. Before we worked on certification, we actually did audits of downstream facilities. So if you give a recycler, say, a laptop that you are unable to refurbish, all those pieces, circuit boards, metals, batteries, where they go, we would go to the final destinations just to kind of make everybody feel better about where the material went back in the day. Now it's actually, we're concerned about the legality of where they're going, but also making sure they're handled appropriately for environmental health and safety regulations as we would want them taken care of in the US. So we have a big background and a big footprint in terms of how far we've gone and how long we've been in the industry. So I did want to talk a little bit about the benefits because other than that, why go through the process? Because it's not a simple process. So the reason that people come to me, and a lot of the ITAD people have come to me more recently in this last 12 months, is that they're unable to bid on some of the equipment that they want to get because the people that they're buying from want them to be certified. And they want them to be certified because they know that if they're certified, they're not going to hopefully end up with any of their equipment that they wanted to be end of life in some kind of a landfill in Shenzhen or Ghana. Or also they're going to know that if the equipment they're selling you, if it is going to be refurbished, which is what all of you are doing, that you're going to make sure it's fully functional, that it's cosmetically looking great, that any of their markings have been removed. So there's sort of a commitment and a knowledge that if you're using a certified recycler, you're going to be protected to a certain level from legal requirements, where your material ends up, and making sure there's legality in your exports and all of the handling of your equipment. The other thing that that people come to me about, honestly, is that they can't get the really big accounts. So an interesting thing, though it doesn't always occur, is that all government purchases, which are, of course, our largest purchasers of electronic equipment in our country is our government, are supposed to only use recyclers that are certified. And that's part of this initiative called EPEAT. Some of you may be familiar with it from the manufacturer's standpoint. And the reason that the government contracts are only supposed to use certified recyclers is for all of the reasons that I mentioned before. So lots of times people just want to get their local school district's material, or if they have federal buildings in the town that they're in, they want to be able to get that material and they're unable to bid on it. It doesn't always occur because not all agencies are aware of those purchasing agreements and requirements, but for the most part, they are becoming more aware, and I think that's why more of you are reaching out to us. So those are the main reasons to get certified. Other than these things that I'll talk about that I think are other good reasons to get certified that you don't usually come to me for. The most important thing for me and the biggest change I've seen in our industry is that being certified helps you make sure you're meeting all of your legal requirements. So basic OSHA requirements, basic fire requirements, any environmental requirements, all of those things you kind of get your arms around in the preparation to be certified. Even simple things like local regulations, federal regulations about how to handle batteries, for example. All of those are part of the process of becoming certified, because in the certification process, you need to identify all the legal requirements that are applicable to you and demonstrate that you have the right things in place to show that you're in conformance with them. The other thing that's been a big game changer, though many of you already do this fairly well, is quality control. Quality control around testing and refurbishment, quality control around data wiping, and just having systems in place to make sure that your customers are happy. How do you check in with your customers at, sequential periods of time, that you're doing things to the degree they want them done, but also downstream quality. How are your the people to whom you're selling equipment to, how are they pleased with what they're buying from you? How are those relationships going? As well as parts controls, parts coming in, parts going out. What kind of quality control do you have around that? I also noticed that it brings a certain level of efficiency to an organization, because you really also, when I talk about getting your arms around legal requirements, it makes you get your arms around your procedures, writing them out, making sure that they're correct, that everybody's using the same procedures. There's a whole document control process within the certification world that just keeps things kind of on track. So of course, when we talk about how it will make you money, we always hope you're going to save money by being more efficient, having better quality control, and making sure you're following the legal requirements. But then there's the other things that are more obvious from your sales team. You're going to make money because your customers want it. Maybe not that many are asking for it now, but my assumption is they are, because I wouldn't have so many of you as new clients this last year. It also helps you be better in planning for any possible purchases or things you might be looking forward in the future. So there is a part of being certified that is continual improvement, as well as having targets and objectives to be better at certain things throughout the year. It's an ongoing process. The other thing that is really helpful is that you have to plan to set aside resources to manage the system, but also to set aside resources to improve the business annually, which, while some of us might do a lot of this in our heads, having it into a system that gives you paper and meetings and requirements around that makes things really improve much more quickly. And honestly, I have seen such big changes in the industry because of certification over the last 20 years. So some of the highlights, when we talk about certification, part of certification is also having an environmental system. One of those that we use in our industry is ISO 14001. I'm sure you're all familiar with at least the term of ISO in terms of quality. And when you're in other countries, you see them on the side of people's trucks and on signs in their buildings. We don't push it that much in our own country, but it is recognized internationally. So when we talk about ISO 14001, it's specifically for environmental. So anything about your, how you affect the environment, how you improve the environment, and it also manages any responsibilities you have from an environmental standpoint for your community, but also just basic sustainability. ISO 45001 is health and safety, so it's called the Occupational Health and Safety Management System, and it gives us a guidance for how we manage all of the processes to keep our workers safe and healthy, but also for prevention. How do we prevent injuries, ill health? But it also is continually, as I talked about before, improving your occupational health and safety performance. So you're always looking for a target annually to get your health and safety team or performance to be better. So it helps you to keep improving that, as well as get your arms around the basic requirements. ISO 9001 is the quality standard. So it gives us our specific requirements for how we're going to show that we're consistently giving products and services that meet our customer requirements. And it also really aims to enhance customer satisfaction by effectively applying the system for improvement. And so we talked a little bit about customer surveys, client surveys, sales surveys. How do we keep everybody happy? Are we keeping everybody happy? How many RMAs do we have? Why do we have them? How do we break down the reasons around those, and how do we fix that? Instead of just saying, oh, we had 20 RMAs last month, have it in a list, have it somewhere documented. It really wants you to continue improving from a quality perspective, how you manage all of the things of your business. RIOS encompasses all of those three things. RIOS is environmental, health and safety, and quality, and it was specifically designed for the recycling industry by ISRI, which is one of our industry organizations within the recycling industry. So you can, when you're choosing to be certified, you can choose to either have environmental, health and safety, and quality within the ISO family, or you can choose RIOS itself, one standard, and have it all encompassed. And so those are the requirements that are alongside of being certified to R2. So R2, the largest electronics recycling standard out there, says you have to be R2. If you're going to be R2, you have to concurrently be certified to an environmental health and safety and quality standard. E-Stewards, which is the other standard that's out there, and we'll talk a little bit about that, says you have to concurrently be certified to ISO 14001. So E-Stewards is really specific in which standard has to go along with it. R2 says you can do either or. And of course, I know this is a lot of information. So if you'd like to do a deeper dive with me about this at any time, I'm happy to do that as a fellow member, but also to show you documents and kind of go through the process and explain more about it. This is really just a high level view. The most widely adopted standard is the R2 standard. It recently was updated in July of last year. We are on what is called R2v3. The standard's been around since 2008, I think is when it first was published. This is the third change of the standard, the update of the standard. Everyone certifying moving forward as of January of this year will be certifying to what's called R2v3. There are over 900 facilities worldwide certified to R2 at this time. And so it is a very large standard, a lot of members, a lot of certified folks to the standard, and it is worldwide. The other standard that you hear a lot about out there is E-Stewards. E-Stewards and R2 actually started off together, the folks from E-Stewards, and E-Stewards left because they had some significant changes they wanted that R2 to follow, and R2 wasn't willing to limit some of the export controls, and also there were some issues around some prison labor that E-Stewards would not agree to. They created their own standard. There are, I believe, over 70 facilities worldwide certified to E-Stewards. And again, E-Stewards requires concurrent certification to ISO 14001 and will, as of August of this year, also require concurrent certification to the NAID standard, which is the data security standard. So again, R2 is more widely known, more widely adopted, requires 14,000, 9,000, and 45,000, or, excuse me, RIOS. E-Stewards has about maybe over 70 participants worldwide and requires certification to ISO 14,000 concurrently, as well as NAID, the data security standard. So what's this going to cost you if you want to move forward with this? And that's always the most important thing that I go over with everyone right away when I meet with them. If you choose to do RIOS, there is a membership fee that is annual, and it gives you access to the standard and resources. If you choose to work with a consultant, which I would say 98% of companies use a consultant, it will save you time, but it really depends on you and your team and what your resources are. Our fees are anywhere from $12,000 to $13,000. Some consultants also are up to $20,000, depending on how large you are, the consultant themselves, whatever their work group is specializing in. On top of that fee, you also have a certification body audit. So while you'll use a consultant to help you get prepared, you'll have to be certified annually by what's called a certification body auditor. They also have a fee. It will depend on the number of employees, the amount of material you bring in, how many downstream vendors you have. Most of you will have very few because you're ITAD folks, you're not recyclers. It depends on the scope, and then there might be some travel expenses with your auditor. The first year for a really low risk small business, it could be anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 I have seen. And remember, you're going to get audited every single year. The first year is a certification audit, large audit. The second and third years are what we call surveillance audits, a little bit smaller, less time. The fourth year is what it comes back again to a recertification audit. You only engage the consultant the first year, but sometimes people use consultants to help them a little bit throughout the year, and also to do something called an internal audit, which is required. So every year you're keeping your system up to date. You have an internal audit at some point before you have your certification body audit to make sure you're doing everything right. Then you have what's called a management review meeting to go over the results of that audit and how you're going to correct anything that came up. And then you're ready for what's called your certification body audit, which is when they're going to come in each year. Hope that helps a little bit with the timing process. And remember, again, I want to reiterate, if you have any need to talk with me at any point later to deeper dive into this, I'm happy to do that for you. So I usually tell people to look at about 20 grand their first year. We also want to think about, of course, the annual cost. There is a membership fee for e-stewards, a licensing fee for e-stewards and R2. And of course, if you chose to do RIOS, there's a licensing fee for RIOS too. There's also sometimes capital expenditures depending on what you're already doing. So you might not have a software for data wiping. You might not have any way to demonstrate that your testing is actually done to the requirements of R2. Some people like to purchase an ERP, and all of those vendors have been a part of these presentations, I know. So yeah, I know Blanco's here. I think there are some ERP folks. I think Vested is part of this group, but those might be some other expenditures. It's not required that you have an ERP. It is required that you're able to demonstrate data sanitization and also testing and repairs. So you would need to be able to show through your software that you checked BIOS, that it was for that serial number, that it removed data for that serial number. And those are things we can talk about a little bit more if you'd like to meet with me separately. And then you also need to think about costs for continual improvement. So every year you are working to be a better organization around environmental, health and safety and quality, but also for the standard itself, whichever that you'll be certified to. So it's not, part of the conversation I have when I first meet people is, what new business will it bring in for you? Let's talk a little bit about that. And then what would those fees be so that you guys can make informed decisions? Whoops, I flipped through there quickly. About whether or not it's worth it for you to go through the process. So the timeline from start to finish is, some people I've had do it in 4 months. I'd like to think that we would have 6 to 8 months. The process of working with us is 3 months. You need at least 3 months of documentation before you can have your audit. And then you have an internal audit, and then your audit occurs itself. That process is a couple of months as well, because they come to do what's called a stage 1 audit, and about a month later, a stage 2 audit. And then a month after that, after they've gone through all your documents, you get your certificate. It's hard to not pass this process. You might end up with a few non-conformances, but I've never had anybody fail. The only people I've had fail that I've worked with are people that have changed their mind for some reason, or have lost the key employee that I was working with and they just decided not to pursue it any longer. But you'll always make it through the process. The challenge is annually, every year, keeping up on things. And that's when the rubber hits the road, so to speak. But the average time we like to tell people is anywhere from 6 to 8 months, just to give yourself time for planning. I often get calls when people say to me, can I buy my R2 license, or can I buy my e-steward license? And I have to give them all this sort of sad information about pricing and logistics and what it takes. So I like to be upfront with that right in the beginning when I'm talking to folks. So in the very last part here, we just have resources for you. If you want more information, we've given you all the websites and of course our contact information. I know this is a very high level view for all of you. Some of you may already have some information and understand some of this, but if there's anything we can ever do to help, we're here for you. Happy to do presentations to just kind of go over what it all looks like and talk about pricing individually for your company if that's something you're interested in. Many of you I talk to and I don't hear from you for a year. So a lot of the people that signed up with me, with us in this last 12 months are people that I've spoken to for years or met at eScrap or at eReuse conferences and talked about it, but they just weren't ready to make the commitment, the financial commitment and time commitment until they were really pushed there in terms of not being able to expand anymore, that it made more sense for them. So just to let you know, I'm always available for you at any time if you want to talk about this any further.
Great. Kelly, super. A few of the questions that seem to be coming up have a repetitive theme, if you will, and that's how big does my company need to be considered, consider certification? What's the volume I need to do, or is there any way you can kind of quantify that?
Sure. We have companies that are that have 10 facilities worldwide, and 700 to 800 employees. And then our smallest employee was a young man that started in high school in his garage repairing phones. He's since moved to a business suite. He's in his 20s. So there's no commitment or requirement on size, number of employees. What is required is that you're able to demonstrate the ability to do thorough wiping and testing, and then also track material. Again, you don't have to do that with an ERP. You can do that manually as well. Mm-hmm. So no limiting factors there.
Okay, that's great. And how do you choose? I mean, how does one, or how choose between Rios and eSteward, and in Europe there's also you didn't mention a DISA. How do you choose which certification you go with?
So for some people, ISO is really important to them because it's internationally known. And so in terms of if they're going to do R2 and they can have the choice between Rios and ISO, some people know that they do a lot of international business and ISO is important. If you do mostly domestic business and you do your repair and then sell here, a lot of people choose Rios. It's less audit days. It's 2 standards. It's a great standard. It actually ends up saving you money because you're certifying to 2 standards instead of 4. And some people choose eStewards over R2 because their clients ask it of them. Mm-hmm. So eStewards did a really good job marketing early on to some big, what they call enterprise clients who say, we're not even going to talk to you unless you're eSteward certified. Both standards are very difficult and take a lot of time to get prepared for. So
great.
I hope that's helpful.
No, that very, very much. And I do know of at least one ASCDI member that has contracted your services. They love it. And they're actually, I think, on the way to becoming R2 V3 certified. And they've told me they couldn't do it without you. So I highly recommend, if you're considering this, get hold of us. We'll put you in contact with Kelly. But
of course, thank you.
It's what I would do. And one thing to remember too, ASCDI has its own ITAD certification program, ASCDI ITAD Certify. What it does is builds upon all the certifications that Kelly's been mentioning today, and it couples with those certifications the ASCDI's ethics program. So ASCDI's ITAD Certify program is not a standalone certified program, but it's really ITAD Certify on steroids, if you will. Gives you a little bit of extra credit for being that ASCDI member. So just be aware of that.
Thanks for your time, everyone. Thanks, Joe, for having us.
Kelly, thank you too. Everybody else, we're going to start in another 2 minutes, our final formal session called Redeploy. So go grab some water, do a bathroom break, and come on back to the main stage in 2 minutes. We'll see you then. Kelly, again, thank you.
Take care.